3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com.
GrokTALK.
And once again, it's Saturday, February 28th. This is GrokTALK, a production of GrokTALK.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site. And we are thankful to CNHT, the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, for giving us this area that we can broadcast to you pretty much every single Saturday, given weather, sickness, and equipment malfunctions. But we are glad to have you here. I'm Skip. That's Mike sitting in the TV in a box seat.
Absolutely.
And we have Steve, who normally sits where I'm sitting right now, reporting live from CPAC. Good morning, Steve.
And we've all shifted right one seat, and it's Steve's turn to be out the door and phoning it in. But Steve's somewhere real good. He's at CPAC.
I am in National Harbor, Maryland, in this rather hellacious hotel whose name starts with a G, and I don't know the name of it because it's not posted anywhere, which is awfully modest of them, but it is a gorgeous place. And I'm at CPAC. Guy Tomflaw is here with his wife Barbara. Jane Cormier is here with her husband. A couple other folks from New Hampshire. We all took a bus down on Thursday. Long, boring, tired bus trip, and we'll be heading back tonight. But we're here today for our second day. We were here all day yesterday and had the full, basically, I want to say 10 hours we were here for speeches and activities and booths.
And look out for other New Hampshireites. You're probably going to find Diane Bitter down there. I know Andrew Hemingway in a car full of partiers, at least that's the way it sounded, drove down there as well.
There are other folks here. I know that I ran into Alan Kolb yesterday.
Oh, cool.
And, so there are other people here I haven't seen. Andrew, I know somebody told me he was here. I'm going to go downstairs to the hub where all the booths are and see if I can find a few more folks after I get off the phone with you guys, because I didn't really spend enough time down there.
No, and don't forget to troll the exhibits when you get a chance. You may find some very interesting people or organizations. It's where I've run into a few of the folks that we now stay in contact with.
Well, hey, Republicans for legalizing marijuana is down there, so who knows?
Yeah. Now, have you had a chance to hit Bloggers Row and Radio Row?
I have walked past Radio Row a few times because it's right outside the main hall where all the speeches are. All the usual, suspects are there, and I haven't really had time to talk to anybody. But there's lots of line. They have a straw poll that they're doing, and this morning it's the first time that I've actually seen, and the lines aren't like 10 people deep to fill it out. So I'll probably try to do that this morning.
Nice.
And I will go back downstairs and talk to people at booths. I know the NRA is down there, and of course other gun groups, and all the conservative groups. Heritage is down there. Hillsdale College, of course. They have book signings and things. So it's a great event. If you want to come down here in the future, my recommendation would be that you don't do it last minute like I did it, but that you plan ahead and that you give yourself a good schedule and make sure you can get yourself in places, like if you want to do things with media and you want to be involved with the bloggers and stuff, to plan ahead so you can show up for those events that they have that are usually in the evening. I didn't attend any of those because I was so burned out when I got down here, but there's a lot of opportunity to meet people. I did meet my editor with the Franklin Center. He was down here. I got a chance to talk to him for a few minutes. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of people here, a lot of activists. It's a great place to come and connect. And
did you find Pete in Jemmy, the tech guy, down there yet?
I know he's here. I haven't seen him.
Yeah, probably Bloggers Row.
Yeah. I'll have to go back down there and see if I can find him. It's all, it's in the back of the main speaking area, and there's literally table after table after table of guys sitting at laptops and girls sitting at laptops. So
I bet.
So I'd have to go through and look for him and go, hey, Pete.
Now, what's the overall mood? How is the tenor of the audience? Are they upbeat, downcast, split between the establishment versus the conservative libertarians? Give us a description of how people are reacting.
people are, I don't know. I don't know. It's a good mood. People are excited to be here. A lot of the speeches are very, they bring up Hillary Clinton a lot. They talk about ISIS a lot. I think those are two topics that everybody seems to want to touch on. Clearly, the economy. So the general consensus is that, 2014 was nice, but it doesn't really mean anything if we don't get the presidency. And, there's a lot of people down here. Nobody will admit that they're running, but clearly they're all here because they're planning to. So,
yeah, and it's not so much it doesn't count for anything if we don't get the presidency. It doesn't count for anything unless they stand for something.
Well, that's true, and of course it's CPAC. So while it is a conservative conference, this attracts activists and politicians across the spectrum, and everybody's going to pitch to the conservative voice, even though there's people who say that CPAC and the ACU isn't as conservative as it should be.
Now, question for you. Have you heard anybody talking about what's been going on with the Senate and the House this week? Because last night they gave a 1-week extension to full funding for DHS. Certainly McConnell has had the Senate cave to the Democrats. It looks like Harry Reid's still running the Senate. And now Reid is also threatening Boehner. So you're seeing an Alinsky move against the Republicans still, even though they own the majorities in both houses. Has anybody talked about that today?
I think it's come up, maybe not yet this morning, but you talk to people, and the general consensus here, at least to the people that I've talked to and listened to, is that it's important to block obnoxious, ridiculous, let's just keep funding everything bills. I think that people are against the immigration executive order, having that all tied up with DHS spending or whatever gymnastics they want to do. They want it to stop. They want people to stop and look at it and go, all right, this is crazy spending. It doesn't make sense. Let's take a mature approach about it. Some things have to get cut. We don't need to spend all this money on all these things all the time. And I don't think people were really not happy with any passage of that funding bill in the way that it came down. I think they're a little bit happier that it's been blocked temporarily, even though they funded it for a week. And I think everybody understands that at some point it's just a question of negotiating how they're going to cave, not if they're going to cave.
So any blowback against the Republicans for all campaigning on this issue of stopping this unconstitutional action? And now they're seeing the leaders who loudly proclaim that they would stop Obama, basically, here you are on a silver platter?
Well, that's people. It's disappointing. You send folks down to D.C. and you say, look, they run on, we're going to stop this, and then it's business as usual. So
this is why you see the interest in the 10th Amendment movement, and why you see actual talk of maybe half the states thinking of seceding from the Union, because they frankly just had it with trying to send their representatives to D.C. and anything actually changing.
Well, that's just it. We're right outside D.C., so a lot of people from D.C. are here, and a lot of these people, their bread is buttered by the federal behemoth. So, but they would like to see a little bit. You got to wonder. I mean, how many people are just here looking to get a seat at the table? How many people are here just trying to get that voice heard? If they really expect any change at all? So, it's interesting. There's a lot of young people. A lot of them are from around the D.C. area. Obviously, there's people here from all over the states. But I wonder. When I come to these things, I wonder what their expectations are. And I'm not going to talk to all of them, of course. I'll talk to a handful, and you can't really use that as your litmus. But I continue to go right along with what Susan says. State of New Hampshire, screw D.C., or if you want to reverse that, screw D.C., state of New Hampshire. I think that these people need to take the things that they learn and they hear back to their states and work locally to make change there.
Well, that sounds, I think we all agree with that here, because in this state of New Hampshire, we certainly have the ability to change the tenor of what's going on, but as I keep seeing over the years, what happens in D.C. is happening here in Concord, and we see the dysfunction of the Republican Party once again down there, and we see it up here with the Speaker's race. Anybody, with the folks that you've talked to, have you ask them about how their state is going and whether or not we're experiencing the same thing as they are, or are they having more success?
I haven't really talked to anybody about what's going on in their state. I think, from where we're sitting, it looks like they're having more luck than we are. Just looking at it from New Hampshire, just because of the fact that we know what's going on in our House and our Senate, and we know that they worked together to make sure they had a rhino majority, and we know that their plan all along was to make sure Medicaid expansion would continue to survive, and they really kind of drove a lot of that inside baseball that resulted in Jasper becoming the Speaker. They're protecting their monopoly on power and their connections to the federal government. I think a lot of states, you're going to have that. I haven't talked to anybody specifically about what's going on in their state legislatures. Not even entirely sure how many of these people are really that connected locally. But I get the sense, just from the few people that I've talked to, that they don't know about our situation. They don't know how we got screwed over by the rhino. So I would be interested to hear that, though.
Yeah, see if you can find any of the bloggers from Iowa. Also, see if Joe Miller is.
Here, so
yeah. See if Joe Miller from Alaska has come down. Since he's not running for anything right now, I suspect not. But he's also got his own radio show these days.
Yeah, he might be here someplace. Actually, you could probably check his Twitter feed or check his. Check his blog.
So, what are you looking forward to seeing or listening to today, Steve?
I don't know. They haven't really updated the schedule for speakers today. Like I said, I'm going to go down to the hub and poke around and talk to some folks at the booth. And, we're only here till about 11:30, quarter to 12. We have to get back on the bus because it's a 10, 12-hour trip. And so we want to get back before midnight. So I'm really only here for half a day today. But I'll see who the speakers are once they get the schedule updated, and I'll go listen to a few. Because, if you turn that picture upside down, it's a gorgeous room. It really is a great experience to be here. I think that, if you have a bucket list, and I don't have one, but if I had it, I could check this off because it's just kind of fun.
Well, it sounds like you are having fun. So enjoy yourself in that basically big bathtub of politics on the conservative side. And say hi to the folks in New Hampshire that you come out. And I hope that on the way home you might be able to interview some of the folks who came down with you on the bus and say, hey, what did you get out of this, and did it meet your expectations? And
although I haven't slept really well for 3 days, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, the other thing is, if they want, let's do a radio show with those folks. Bring them in. We'll put a mic on a boom, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you never know. That's what we do.
Indeed, that is what we do.
And you should start planning for 2020. We could probably come down here and try to get in and do some interviews when New Hampshire will be relevant again. So.
I think we need to plan for that. I really do. First in the nation primary state, at least right now, we should be able to get a bunch of folks walking through, and we'll see what happens. But
yeah, I think we need to plan for the big events. By the way, Right Online is back this year, so we might want to see about how we get a presence at it.
Oh, that's true. Gosh, there's too many things and not enough money and time.
That's true. It's money and time, man.
That's right. And the airlines just keep making it harder and harder to schlep all the stuff around, I'll tell you.
I know. You got to ship it.
Well, if it's not too far, the thing to do is to rent a van and do a road trip.
No, screw the van. Get an RV.
Well, yeah.
Come on, guys. We want to be able to be nice and comfortable.
I'll ride shotgun as long as it's an actual shotgun.
Not running through New York, we're not going to.
Not Massachusetts, and not New York, not Connecticut, not, I don't know, most of those states. So.
Shall require the chief of state police to negotiate reciprocal licenses with other states.
There you go.
Yeah, well, listen, we got to go. We got to take a break. We're going to have Jorge Mesa-Tejada on his educational update, and we also have coming up pretty soon Max Abramson with criminal justice update, as he has in a couple past weeks ago. We're also going to have Representative Josh Moore come on to talk about that technical notification from New Hampshire Commissioner, Department of Education, basically saying parents have no rights at all. That will be a very interesting discussion. And, of course, our Whiskey Tango Foxtrot moment of the day. And I'm already nominating Timothy Horrigan for the stupidest comment so far I've seen from him. So, Steve, I want to say thanks a lot for coming on short notice, and we'll see you next week.
All righty. Take it easy.
All right.
All right.
Folks, we're going to take a short breaks here, and we will be back in just a couple of moments, again with Jorge Mesa-Tejada. We'll be back.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
And we are back. I am Skip Murphy. This is GrokTALK, a production of GraniteGrok.com from New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site. And I am here with Mr. Mike. We just got through talking with Steve, talking with him from CPAC, and we are now ready to talk to Jorge Mesa-Tejada on our educational update. We're awful thankful that he will come on and talk with us every once in a while to say what's going on in education land. Jorge, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Skip and Mike.
That's correct.
I am fine, thank you. I'm enjoying your green room. No food, but it is nice.
So, how was it?
Well, you know, in a green life, there is no food because the environmentalists want to starve us.
I forgot about that.
So what's new, Jorge?
Okay, I figured that this is town and school meeting time in New Hampshire. And I thought that I would talk about one item that usually comes up and that people don't know a thing about, namely class size. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because it is a very political item. You know, the parents love it. They fight to get the lowest class size possible from the school board. They go home saying, "Oh, super! I'm almost having a 1-to-1 teacher-to-student ratio for my child, and I'm happy." And what does it mean? And then there is another little statistics that is seldom mentioned by the administration, which is really the one that tells you how well the staff is being applied to the student population, and that is the student-to-teacher ratio. So what I would like to do is talk a few minutes about the difference between class size and student-to-teacher ratio. Does that sound good?
That's
Sure.
most excellent. And by the way, there were classes of around 35 to 40 kids when I was growing up, and if you have reasonable discipline, it never hurts.
Which proves my point. The class size means nothing. Okay, so let me start by defining them. Class size in New Hampshire is defined by minimum standards, ED 306-17, where it says that kindergarten through grade 2 should be 25 or fewer students per teacher. But the district should strive not to have more than 20. In grades 3 to 5, it should have about 30 students per teacher. But they should strive for 25. In middle and senior high school, 30 students or fewer per teacher. And then of course, this does not apply to large classes like gym and labs and things like that. All right. Now, that's what they do. But they leave it up to the school board to define what the class size is for the particular school district. Okay? Now, on the other hand, student-to-teacher ratio is a statistical measurement correlating the number of full-time equivalent teachers and the number of students. And it is computed annually by the Department of Education for every school district. And they do it for the October enrollment. And that's really the measurement as to how all the professionals that you have are being utilized. The student-to-teacher ratio is for all the students and teachers in public schools and public academies. Preschool enrollments and kindergarten are not included in this measurement, nor are the teachers. And total teachers is the full-time equivalent of all teachers for grades 1 through 12. And full-time equivalent means if you have a teacher that is there for the full day teaching, but you have some part-time teachers, you also count them in. And students to teacher ratio, and this is very important, is that a measurement of average class size. Got that, guys? So that is the big difference between the two. Let me give you an example. For the latest measurement, which was published for the enrollment in 2014, Hampstead students to teacher ratio is 11.0. The state average is 12.0. We have 808 students and 68 full-time equivalent employees. Laconia, on the other hand, is 10.7 to 1. Okay? Now, how do you...
You said employees.
No, full-time equivalent teachers.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. I'm talking teachers
I
only.
just wanted to be sure we were really counting teachers here, Jorge. Sorry.
Only teachers. Thank you, Mike. Okay, now, take the Hampstead example. How do you break it down? In Hampstead, we have 5 classrooms per grades in grades 1 through 8. So if you multiply that by 5 by 8, you get 40 full-time equivalent teachers for those classrooms. Okay? What happens to the other 38 teachers?
Good question.
Okay, so we have art teachers, we have music teachers, we have computer teachers, and all that. But it's almost twice the population. Then don't forget, I'm not counting all the aides. We have about maybe an equal or more or larger number of educational aides that have been slowly creeping into the district because of special education. You know, the IED, the Individualized Education Plan for some of the special education kids, requires a dedicated aide. Well, those get hired, but they do not leave when the kid moves. They stay on because all of a sudden they become, quote, permanent district employees. So you begin to accumulate these, and they're all below the radar.
You know, Jorge, that's a very important point because I hadn't thought about that.
I thought these these teachers' aides and special ed teachers were generic and fungible. In other words, they were simply recycled when the next kid came into the system. You're saying that they're acquired based on a particular child and then kept forever?
Let me be more specific. The special education teachers are full-time teachers. They're teachers. Think of them as teachers. I'm thinking of the aides that because of the handicaps of the specific child may be required to aid that kid throughout the day. You know, some of them are incontinent, some of them can, there are all sorts of reasons why you have to have a one-on-one to be with the kid all day in addition to the teacher. That's what I'm talking about.
Now, isn't this a function or an outgrowth of when they used to, I wouldn't say house all these special ed kids into one room, but I remember it was somewhat of a, you're in room 113 kind of deal when I was growing up in the town of Brockton. And we knew that that's where all the special kids were being kept. And there were always a lot of, there was the main teacher and then there were a lot of aides because for exactly why the reasons that you're talking about, but never all that many aides. Now where they're trying to mainstream them into the regular classrooms, is this one of the reasons why you've seen the explosion of extra personnel costs?
No, it's because since the teacher of the classroom cannot handle all the special education needs of every single student in there, then an aide comes with a child.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. And I'm sorry, Jorge, but that's exactly what I'm trying to point out. That if you had one teacher and 5 aides in a class dedicated to special ed, instead, your personnel costs would be lower because nowadays all of those special ed kids are in lots of different classrooms, and it might now take 15 special ed para teachers.
Well, the thing is, we no longer have special education classrooms.
Right, and
they're all integrated.
Right, and that's why I'm saying because of mainlining, it has necessarily pushed up the personnel costs, and they just get, they just never go away because bureaucracies never want to grow smaller; they only want to grow larger.
True, the intent is good, but the execution is at fault. Because my point is that sure, get the special aid, the educational aid to go with the kid, say from grades 1 through 4. But when he moves to middle school, I move him to middle school, or when the kid leaves the district, then that aid's employment is terminated. But that doesn't happen. So we begin to accumulate leftover, shall I say, aids.
Yep.
So why don't they get recycled to the next kid? Because they're constantly justifying more based on kids coming in, right?
Right. Some are, but it is very hard to get a full accounting of that because they are under the radar. They are not as visible as teachers in the payroll.
And it's all overhead costs. And I have to ask, really, why do we have what appears to be a plague of this right now? Because, again, going back to growing up, you and I and Skip probably remember, a very minimal number of special needs kids in a school of hundreds.
Okay.
I don't understand why so many people are classified as in need of a personal assistant, and what the hell happens when they enter the workforce?
Mike, if I may, let me defer that for another talk, because now you're going into special education, and that's a totally different
I look forward to that.
Okay. Let's stay with now. I just stated what class size is versus student-teacher ratio. And I was just trying to tell you that of the two metrics, the one that gives you the more accurate picture of the personnel, how personnel is being allocated, is student-teacher ratio. Now, class size, on the other hand, is a great political football. Parents keep fighting for the lowest class size, and they go home saying, "Oh, even though my kid's in public school, I almost have private school ratios because I almost have a 1-to-1 teacher with ratio with my teacher. My kid is getting a specialized situation." But the problem is that class size, except in grades 1 through 4, is really meaningless, because once the attendance is taken at middle and high school homerooms, the students disperse. And what happens in science, in math, and in English and all that has no relationship to the homeroom ratio, which is what they use to publicize how they meet the State Board of Education ratios. So the administration loves the parents to talk about class size because it makes you feel good, but it's really meaningless. But the teachers union just love it because now they can lobby for more employees.
Wow. Yeah, it just never stops. Jorge, we've basically come to the end of the segment here, and once again, I want to say thanks for coming on, giving us another view into the educational system, especially here in New Hampshire. And I'm hoping that you will come back and talk about what Mike was trying to lead you into, was the discussion, and me to some extent as well, a discussion on special ed and how that is staffed.
And if your audience could send you suggestions as to what topics they would like to hear, I would love to entertain that.
Oh, absolutely. In fact,
finally, I would like to say that I'm going to post my remarks on Granite Grok at the end of this talk. So if anyone wants to go and review them, I'll also post the links as to where they can get the information.
Excellent, folks.
Thanks, Jorge.
Yeah, Jorge, thank you very much. You are a treasure of knowledge here, and we're very thankful that you come on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
All right, take care, Jorge. And folks, we're going to be moving on now. We have Max Abrams, who's supposed to be coming in pretty soon, Representative Josh Moore, on the recent memo that basically says we don't care about no stinking parental notification or rights at all on this part of parents according to their kids in our school system. We have your children. And again, whiskey,
which has been something they've been working on since Bismarck.
But we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. We're going to go to a break right now, and we'll be back.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com.
GrokTALK.
And we are back. I am Skip Murphy. Mike is here with me in studio. This is GrokTALK, a production of GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site, as well as CNHT, the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. And we are thankful to them for lending us their area here for us to have all of our equipment and our guests and our stuff. And once again, we are here to talk about the news of the day and what else is going on. Excuse me. We are waiting for our next guest to show up here. Not quite sure where they're at just yet. We're expecting Max Abramson to show up here in studio for his criminal justice update segment. We're still going to wait on him, but in the meantime, Mike, there's lots going on.
Oh, yes, there is. Okay, so let's begin. So this week, the FCC voted, because they were told, to regulate the internet as a common public utility, just like your phone company, electric company, and cable company, which doesn't seem to me to be the best way to foster innovation.
And they've already been slapped down once for attempting to do this. What Mike's talking about is trying to put the dynamic internet as it has grown up at this point back into the 1930s, when the first federal regulations were put into place to highly regulate the phone system, as it was morphing into much more of a monopoly than what it was at the time. With basically, you can't do anything unless we tell you that you can, and here's, oh, by the way, how much you're going to charge for that particular service.
And how much you're allowed to make as profit, which is how electricity companies and phone companies are regulated.
Yeah, so all of a sudden...
within an inch of their life.
Right, so what's happened is the FCC, by a vote of 3-2, Democrats versus Republicans along party lines, have just decided that we are basically going to make the internet a government monopoly, or at least a highly regulated government environment, and this has all been done under net neutrality. And you know, right. I got to read that little thing that blurb.
So there's two things wrong. I mean, some people say that the phone companies are in some ways ripping them off. I had an excellent counterpoint sent to me by one of my colleagues about the things that internet providers are doing wrong. But that is nothing that can't be fixed by competition, in my opinion, and that'll be a lively debate later. The point is that these net neutrality provisions, as they are so called, have been sponsored from the beginning by a guy called Robert McChesney, who is a communist.
Yes, in fact, I have something here. He's actually operating under the Free Press Foundation.
Which is not about freeing the press either.
No, and here's a quote from something that he has said, which gives you his outlook as to why he's been trying to get government to basically take over the internet. In the end, there is no real answer but to remove, brick by brick, the capitalist system itself, rebuilding the entire society on socialist principles. So while they rail about the capitalists and the big mega corporations controlling the internet, we're just swapping all of those big corporations to an even larger government. And once government gets in line and starts to take over, then everything becomes political. As one person said a long time ago, you're only trading one master for another, and the government listens to the loudest special interest. But we'll continue this a little later on in the show.
Because we got plenty of time later, and this is fascinating. And part of it, I will read out the submission from Scott McGrath, which I'll have to post later. So anyway, Max is here, and let's talk about criminal justice updates.
Yes, New Hampshire State Representative Max, what happened to your eye?
I was sick. It's a pretty graphic story. I've been getting asked this for the last 3 weeks.
Wow. Guys, I don't know whether you can see this on camera.
Both eyes. I was throwing up so badly. After you run out of stuff to throw up, your body just keeps trying to heave, and you dry heave until the blood pressure gets so bad that eventually you burst a vessel.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah, so...
Wow. Folks, you can't see this, but his right eye, the right side of his right eye is all red.
Also.
And the left, the left one pretty too underneath. Well, I'm glad to see that you were, if you want to keep your eyes closed, if that's better, that's fine by us. He's blinking like who could I talk about? But anyways.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how healthy that energy drink is here, but...
But anyways, Max, I'm glad...
That's as may be. Max went to the time and trouble of coming here in spite of having suffered lately, and we're very glad he is.
Yeah.
If I might say something about net neutrality, though, I've certainly been a long-time supporter of net neutrality, but I think that's something that can be worked out in the marketplace. I think that the best protection that consumers have isn't government regulation. It's lots of choices and being fully informed. As long as government just protects us from, as long as the courts are there to protect us from force and fraud, I think that's much better than
exactly
regulating everything to
prosecute fraud, prosecute coercion. Do not prosecute competition, and that's the difference. And the communists want to prosecute competition, of course, and anybody who somehow wins through competition. And I think, in terms of competition, what you need is to get the towns out of the business of regulating their local utilities. I'll stop.
Yeah. So what's up on your docket there, Mr. Max?
So we actually had, over the last month, we've had a tremendous amount of good stuff coming up. The most notable and the best attended was, of course, constitutional carry. And that went in front of...
That was SB 116 in the Senate?
And it came up again... I forget the bill number, HB maybe 582.
That sounds right.
Was, yes, it is. That came up on Thursday in front of the House Criminal Justice Committee. I testified on it very briefly. And, of course, the points that I made were the same points that are generally made each year, which is the shall-issue states like Vermont and Montana and formerly New Hampshire have the lowest crime rates, that the may-issue states, as New Hampshire is being slowly turned into by the courts, are higher crime or moderate crime states, and the gun control cities in the states, of course, have the worst crime. Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, and states like Maryland, Illinois. They're stricter gun control states, and consequently only criminals can get firearms, and their murder rates, rape rates, property crime rates are much higher. At the same date, they had another hearing on HB 472. I'm sorry, HB... I've lost it.
That's okay.
HB 650, which is requiring background checks for commercial firearm sales, which is Representative Cushing's bill. Representative Cushing is one of the most liked, respected individuals in the State House, but he's also a supporter of a number of gun control bills, and every year he comes back with a gun control bill, and this year it was the background check bill, which was, one, unnecessary, and two, the bigger concern, of course, was that the bill was poorly written. Now, you can say it's the sponsor, or you can blame Legislative Services, but there were so many problems with the bill that I think that when they exec it, I believe it's due for being exec next Tuesday, that it's unlikely that it will pass.
Well, it's always good when poor bills die. I mean, the first thing is why do we need any more damn laws, and the second thing is why do they have to be so long, voluminous, and full of things that can be used against us later.
Well, in the same vein, I testified against a state sales tax in front of Ways and Means, and the argument that I used, and I got a lot of head nods, and I think we've killed this one again this year, a state sales tax I think would be a lot worse even than a state income tax. Now, those of us who are against a state income tax or a state sales tax, there's the debate going on, which would be worse. I think the sales tax would be economically worse, and I think the administrative problems would be worse. The argument, though, that really struck home, I think, with the committee was, you start with a 2.25% sales tax, and eventually it's going to grow out of control and develop its own life.
Yeah.
Well, you can say that, and I come from Massachusetts, where I've watched the income rate go up and up and up, and it happens pretty much the same way. It always seems to go up and never comes down. Same thing with the sales tax. But at least with the income tax, you can say six of one, half dozen of another. With automatic deductions out of paychecks, most people
don't know how badly they're being robbed, which is part of the argument for a sales tax.
Because it's highly visible.
And if you did away with some of the cost shifting that's involved in robbing school districts to pay poor school districts, for example, and funded by a sales tax, maybe you'd be better off. But anyway, there's a philosophical argument on sales taxes versus property and income taxes, which is a whole long debate. More to the point, you had good reasons why we shouldn't have a sales tax.
Actually, the someone from the Retail Association came in and followed up in even more detail. My argument: there are four problems with any tax.
Actually, I'm going to have you hold on to that thought for just a minute, because we've got to go to a quick break. So if you could, folks, we'll be right back. We are GraniteGrok.com, pushing out this podcast called Grok Talk, and folks, we will return in just a moment.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC, was established officially November of 2012 for the purpose of becoming a media outlet for those individuals who believe and have documentation that they've been unjustly treated by local, state, or federal government agencies. Our mission is to document their stories and to get them out to the public. By collecting and organizing this data, the Center for Redress will be able to better show the public and our legislature that there are issues with some of our government agencies that may be widespread and need to be addressed. Although we are not a nonprofit, we do provide all of our services at no cost to our clients. All of our services may include screening interviews, documentation gathering, audio-video of court hearings, and production of Speak Up, which is our television show. We're funded exclusively through sponsorship of Speak Up and our advertisers on our website. We hope to help those individuals who, with well-documented stories, need to be heard with credibility when the other agencies and media sources turn a deaf ear to them. You can go to our website at www.centerforredress.com and check us out. Anything you would like to donate is truly appreciated, and we will put it to good use.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Grok Talk.
And we are back. I am Skip Murphy with Grok Talk, a production of GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative blogative, I'll go with it, website. Unfortunately, I've had to switch away from the Mountain Dew, and this morning it's showing. But we'll go on with the show. By the way, I just got an email. Steve from CPAC down in Maryland, just outside of D.C., Mike, he likes your scarf.
Okay, well, it's an educational choice scarf from a couple of years ago, actually, National School Choice Week.
Yes, and I am a big believer in the money should follow the child and not just go to the school and the zip code. But that's for another segment. Max, just before the break, you were starting to talk about the 4 reasons why. And if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
There are 4 problems with any tax: sales tax, income tax, gas tax, you name it. The first problem is the lost economic activity. And the lost economic activity is we have structural deficits in New Hampshire. Of course, they exist anywhere, no matter what type of tax you have. Anytime you tax something, people start to notice that that particular item or activity is taxed in your state. So they tend to start migrating to another state. They gradually change their behavior, and they look for less expensive ways to do things. So they avoid the tax. Second is the administrative costs. The administrative costs with a state sales tax would actually be terrible. I come from Washington, and we have a 9% state sales tax.
That's Washington State.
Washington.
Instead of Washington, D.C.
We just call it Washington.
Okay.
Back there, Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. So that's another problem. Another problem is the lobbyists. In Olympia, Washington, we have a steady stream of lobbyists coming in all the time, as do every state with a state sales tax, or a state income tax, or business taxes, or any other type of tax.
Anywhere there's money, you've got lobbyists trying to get it for their people.
And they're trying to get special tax deductions and exemptions. The same thing in Washington, D.C. There's a going rate. I think it's $15 in special tax breaks and exemptions per dollar contributed. So if you want $150 million in tax breaks, you just have to give $10 million out to politicians in Congress in campaign contributions, and you get it.
Oh, yes, Boeing.
Boeing's one of the worst. GE is one of the worst.
Oh, yeah. I believe that. Absolutely.
So we have all these problems, any type of tax you create. So when the governor was talking about all of the nice programs, the commuter rail project and subsidies and $40 million in pay raises for state employees, I'm not just thinking of the $40 million out of people's pocket for this, or $30 million for that, or $300 million for the commuter rail project. It's all of these other problems that result. It's a lost economic activity and lost jobs.
Oh, but you're such a skinflint there, Max. Don't you know that taxes are the price for civilization for an ordered society?
No. When Teddy Roosevelt was president, federal, state, and local taxes consumed 7% of the national income, and most of that was local. We had national parks, fire departments, police departments, civil courts, criminal courts. We had Yellowstone National Park. We had the Great White Fleet that he built. We had an army, a navy. We had everything you could want from government and more. And we had no federal income tax. We had very, very low state-level taxes. People griped about their local property tax levy and whatnot, but overall your tax burden was negligible compared to what it is today, and there was no national debt either.
Right, and now it's closer to 50% for a lot of people.
Oh, and in California and New York and Illinois, where the income taxes are the highest, it can go over 60%. And, I've had...
remember that golfer who threatened to move out of California because he was paying 60% of his income, and the trouble he got from the left?
That's correct. Well,
the problem is federal, state, and local, when you count excise taxes, hidden taxes, import taxes, utility taxes, the whole myriad, transportation, travel, gas taxes, it takes anywhere between 1/3 and 2/3 of your earnings. Now, and it has nothing to do with your income. It has nothing to do with, whether you can afford it or not, or your condition or your occupation. It's almost completely random and arbitrary. It has nothing to do with who can afford to pay it. It's just right on that very first dollar, they start taking about 1/3 of your earnings.
And, it sounds like we're complaining about taxes, and why not? Everybody else does. But for us, there is a point. We understand that, yes, one has to pay taxes for a limited government, which is why this country was founded, a limited government. And I think to provide basic services, none of us would disagree that, yes, every good citizen should pay their fair share. The problem comes into what is that fair share, and when is enough too much? I watch O'Reilly ask that question to people on the left, and they never give an answer. I had a couple of folks have had some long comments on the Grok about this. Recently, it was a tag team effort against Bob, who I kept on asking, when is enough enough? And he'd go off on tangent. He sounded like Timothy Horrigan almost. Oh, we'll talk about Timothy in just a few minutes.
I absolutely believe.
But never would I ever get an answer? When is enough enough? They always go over here, over there, somewhere else, bring in this stat, that stat, and they won't answer the question. Never.
I have always said, I've always maintained, and I've always believed that for Congress, there should be a Constitution candidate, not Constitution party, but a constitutional candidate. So if you get fed up with the two parties, there's always someone there on the ballot, and if they get elected, all they do is go in as a delegate or member of Congress and always vote no on anything that is unconstitutional. It should be automatic, and if the voters vote for that Constitution candidate, he just keeps voting no on everything.
Oh, we've had
Patriot
a few.
Act, NDAA.
Well, and that's I think a reason to have a party that's exactly that as well. The question is, would it keep to its roots? Because the Republican Party says it's for small government and the founding principles of the republic, but it never lives up to it.
That's correct. One of the things that, Dr. No was one such person. Dr. Coburn, who was a senator, he got the nickname of Dr. No. Ron Paul was also a Dr. No, where he would vote against most kinds of things because he felt it, and both of them felt it was not the right thing for government to do, especially at the federal level. And that's where you're seeing the angst on the conservative side right now and the libertarian side and Rand Paul is getting so much publicity and especially excitement from the young where I don't want government listening to your private phone calls. I mean, it really gets to that point where it's freedom versus safety and security. That's that constant battle that we're in. And right now, freedom's not been doing all that well.
No, and Ben Franklin laid it out right at the beginning, and he's been proven to be absolutely perspicacious, as Bill Riley would say.
So there have been a couple of other criminal justice bills that have gone through.
Go for it.
Senate Judiciary, House Judiciary, and House Criminal Justice and Public Safety. One that keeps getting brought up is mortar shells. They want to prohibit the sale of mortar shells, of aerial fireworks in New Hampshire. And now the reason that I signed on against this bill is towns already have the ability to limit or prohibit the use of almost any type of firework within their town. But that's the use. They're talking about the sale. So what this bill would have done, HB 490, which I was asked by a constituent to go testify against or to go take a stand against, was that it doesn't deal with the use. It only deals with the sale of fireworks in New Hampshire. So people can still go to Maine or some other state or buy them online. More and more fireworks are ordered online. So why would they buy something in New Hampshire if it's illegal to buy it here?
All it does is damage the local businesses, which right now are doing very nicely, selling to more restrictive locales like Massachusetts.
Correct.
So where it just turns the situation on its head.
Massachusetts, it's legal to set off fireworks, but it's illegal to buy them there, which is wonderful for us, which I think they're starting to catch on now, that every time they make it illegal to sell something, that people just come up to the, excuse me, they just come up to New Hampshire and they buy it here.
I keep wondering about it's the nanny statism, because a lot of them will say, well, we want to keep you safe, or as Ralph Nader says, we have to save people from themselves. And we've heard that here in New Hampshire from various Democrat legislators, and they just don't want to take the responsibility of saying, let adults or the individuals take responsibility for themselves. And my feeling is if you get hurt doing something like fireworks or skydiving or anything like that, if you get injured, there's your consequence. Here's your sign. And
you'd better have the insurance for it, because that's, again, that's personal responsibility.
Right. And, and I think that if somebody else is injured while you are doing this, then obviously you are going to suffer a big consequence in court. And I don't see why the government has to step in and say, because of the actions of a few, we're going to punish everybody. And I keep thinking that every single time that I open up one of my gas cans to fill up my snowblower, how hard those freaking nozzles are to pour the gas out of the gas things. And I'm going, just because a few yahoos got burnt throwing gas on fires, I have to put up with this crap and spill more gas on the ground than I ever would have before. I just Just hate it.
The dog in the lap bill. I had a constituent ask me about people driving with a dog in their lap.
Guess what? We got to go to another break. Let's come back with that because I don't think we have a 10 o'clock guest at this point. So we've got a full half hour coming up, folks. I'm Skip. He's Mike. We've got Max in the house. And we're just going to have a good old time here talking about stuff of the day and the idiocy of those who want government to be your mom.
All right.
We'll be right back.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Jean Shaheen and her allies are making false claims about her record on veterans. The truth? Shaheen refused to meet with veterans pushing for reform. She wasn't on the committee that wrote the reform legislation and refused to co-sponsor important VA reforms in the VA Management Accountability Act until after the VA scandal broke. When our veterans needed her, Jean Shaheen was AWOL. Tell Jean Shaheen to stop distorting the truth and fix the VA.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jean Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
"There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change."
Jean Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
The Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC, was established officially November of 2012 for the purpose of becoming a media outlet for those individuals who believe and have documentation that they've been unjustly treated by local, state, or federal government agencies. Our mission is to document their stories and to get them out to the public. By collecting and organizing this data, the Center for Redress will be able to better show the public and our legislature that there are issues with some of our government agencies that may be widespread and need to be addressed. Although we are not a nonprofit, we do provide all of our services at no cost to our clients. All of our services may include screening interviews, documentation gathering, audio video of court hearings, and production of Speak Up, which is our television show. We're funded exclusively through sponsorship of Speak Up and our advertisers on our website. We hope to help those individuals who, with well-documented stories, need to be heard with credibility when the other agencies and media sources turn a deaf ear to them. You can go to our website at www.centerforredress.com and check us out. Anything you would like to donate is truly appreciated, and we will put it to good use.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK will be broadcasting live next week from Liberty Forum on Saturday, March 7th, starting at 9 a.m. Please stop by and visit us.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
GrokTALk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
Yes, folks, it is time for GrokTALK. I am, once again, Skip Murphy here at GrokTALK, a production of GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. I've got Mike here in studio, and we are also blessed to have Max Abramson here giving us an extended, in this case, criminal justice update. And we were talking about dogs in the break. Dogs in the lap of people in cars. Dogs in the laps of people in cars driving the cars. And there was a bill in the House. And I kind of look at this as one of those more spurious types of things. Sort of like the person who wanted to eliminate RC boats because it drove up on somebody's lawn and mangled their bushes. She wanted them outlawed. So talk to us about the cars, the dogs, the people, and the cell phones, and the bill.
Well, this isn't the worst one. The worst one of all time, the worst legislation as an alternative to personal responsibility of all time was people who were swimming through boating lanes. The legislator was doing this on behalf of a constituent, and she wanted to have, and the constituent, I think, wanted to have a visible safety device floating behind the swimmer with a chain or rope or tether of some kind attached to the swimmer's neck.
A chain?
Yes.
Is she some sort of bondage freak?
No, she wanted to have the floating safety device well behind the swimmer, floating with a little tiny international orange flag, and then a little tether that would then attach to the swimmer's neck. And I thought that's got to be 10 times worse than just having a swimmer out there. You're better off just not being seen. And I said, I went to sea for a living for 10 years. People have bright orange hats that stick out, and they're much, much safer than having something chained to you. But it turns out in Japan, as a safety device, Japan, which we tend to think of as having their act together, except on this one issue.
And TV shows.
You have to, and anime, and they have to have a little tether attached to their neck, and people get killed in Japan with these things, just like the horse stock life jackets that the Coast Guard requires. They did testing on that. They had people jump in the water and they were decapitated.
Wow.
So then the Coast Guard mandated those.
Wow.
Mandatory death. That's the modern nanny state. No, it's the Nurse Ratched state. So this one was the dog in the lap bill. I had a constituent come up to me the day before going to testify on the cell phone disabling bill, HB 103, which was laughed out of committee. And I testified on that when I testified against it, of course. And, sorry, the dog in the lap. I said, this bill is just like the dog in the lap idea. I had a constituent yesterday come up to me and say, you've got people driving around with a dog in the lap. You should do something about that. And I tried to explain to this constituent how unenforceable that would be. And sure enough, someone on the committee was the prime sponsor on this dog in the lap bill, which I had no idea existed. And he nodded and he said, "Yep, that's my bill." And I thought, oh my gosh, I've just insulted, here's the prime sponsor of another nanny state bill. And I don't think that he sees it that way.
No, they just don't get the basic idea of either negligent driving or without due care and attention, as the Brits call it, or contributory negligence to something bad that happens, which, Heinlein calls bad luck. I mean, basically, you are responsible, and if you do something stupid, if you're looking at the passenger while you're driving and you hit something, it's your fault. If you're fiddling with the radio, brushing your hair, whatever else it is, putting on your makeup, and you hit something, it's your fault. If it's the dog, same thing. Do I need a law against makeup, hairbrushes, passengers, cell phones, dogs, cats, and the mosquito that flew in through the back window? I don't think so.
Max, I do have to ask the question, and it keeps coming up. And I remember that cell phone bill. That was the one where, after a vehicle's going faster than 5 miles an hour, it was supposed to cut off the cell phone, which basically, if you think about it, okay, that's all right maybe for the driver, but then you think about all the occupants in the car, yada, yada, yada. Is a manufacturer going to put in such a device and software that it would do that and suffice it? No, we'd end up with none of us would have cell phones at that point.
I mean, just let me paint the picture, so it doesn't work unless you're under 5 miles an hour. So I'm using my smartphone as a navigation device, and every junction I come up to, I stomp on the brakes, threatening all sorts of accidents to get the vehicle under 5 miles an hour to see if it's time to turn yet, and then accelerate again.
Yeah. So that was laughed out, and I'm glad to hear that. But my question was going to be, don't our representatives ever think to be able to tell the constituents, yes, I represent you, but this really is a bad idea, and here's why I don't want to put this in? I mean, it's almost akin to the idea that nobody is responsible to see what's constitutional until it gets to the courts. And I'm sorry, if you are I think we, as individuals, citizens, should be saying, is this constitutional or not, and then arguing against it. Certainly legislators are supposed to be saying, or should be saying, before this bill gets even written, is this even unconstitutional in the least bit? And the same thing with this bill. What did the representative think? Did he say anything to his constituent?
He's totally serious. Unfortunately, a lot of the legislators come up with ideas like this. They're worse than the...
Yeah. Do New Hampshire legislators take an oath to support and defend the Constitution like national ones do?
Yes, they do. Yes, we do. On Organization Day, we don't just take the oath. We also sign a paper that says we're going to follow both the federal and state Constitution.
Which kind of means that you should be thinking about the Constitution to begin with. Now, I did put this post up last night, and I put, headline is good, the reason is better. Kansas Senate votes to eliminate concealed carry licensing requirements, sort of what we started off with HB 560, whatever it was. It just escaped me. But the constitutional carry bill here in
582.
New Hampshire, 582. Here's what the Kansas State Senate president said. Today we must vote, and when in doubt, and this is the important part, and when in doubt, I believe that if we err, we ought to do so on the side of freedom and the continued protection of our most basic constitutional rights. What a concept! Oh my gosh, that somebody would say freedom should come first, the Constitution should come first, and then we'll talk about the other stuff. So... I have to say, but this guy's a chucklehead for doing
almost
this.
Every time I testify on a bill, one of the first things out of my mouth is, as I always say in testifying, first, government should do no harm. The very first thing, government should do no harm. And many of these victimless crimes, the problem with all victimless crimes is they break down respect for the rule of law, they're almost all unenforceable, and they make crime worse. Once you break down respect for the rule of law, once you start prosecuting everyone for everything, what does the law mean? America has more victimless felonies than all other countries combined.
It just absolutely drives me crazy when I look at the laws coming out of the sausage makers, and you got to go, what were they thinking? And by the way, I just want to let people know that the person who just came in is Representative Josh Moore at the long end of the table here. We're going to be hearing from him on something that's even worse than some of these nanny state idea bills that have gone through, but a bureaucratic snafu concerning our Department of Education commissioner. And I posted that thing, and I just could not believe it. But I want to say thanks for coming into GrokTALK. By all means, If you want to say something, pipe up. This is a free-for-all. All we do, we don't interview people. We just have a conversation around the table. So feel free to join in here, Josh.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thanks for coming in to GrokTALK.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
All right.
So, anyways, something I want a practical application of the constitutional carry bill. We've been hearing a lot from the law enforcement, the state troopers testifying against it in uniform, bringing their authority of as a paid employee. I really get upset when a taxpayer paid employee comes in to argue against something that enhances my constitutional rights. It drives me crazy, but there was this story that I put up last night about a Gordon Potter. Let me just pull that up, and it was something that, I went right past it. There we go. And he got caught. He was weaving in and out of traffic. He was a felon. He had an outstanding felony, a parole violation warrant against him. He had heroin on him. He had prescription drugs on him. He had a concealed knife, pretty much, in the car with him. He had a shotgun in the back. He also had a Kel-Tec 5.56 pistol in the trunk with the shotgun. And I'm thinking to myself, all these people who want the universal background check that you talked about earlier, the constitutional carry, which the opponents are saying, this will result in these felons having all these kinds of weapons. And I just listed some of the laws that he broke right through here. And first off, he's a felon. He's already broken a law, a serious law, just to have that. He's also done something against his parole. So there's another law. He wasn't supposed to have guns at all. He had 2 guns. He didn't undergo the background check for the guns, I'm quite sure, because he would have been stopped from purchasing those guns. If it was a universal background check, it's already illegal for somebody to sell a gun to somebody who is illegal to have a gun. And that may have happened twice. The press reported it as an automatic weapon. So did this guy, Gordon Potter, go through the NFA background check to have a tier 3 weapon, an automatic weapon? The press reported that it was also silenced, and one of our sharp-eyed commentators saw that it was the silencer was labeled FS22, which is it's a fake silencer. But if it had been true, did he go and have that? Did he apply for that next stamp for, again, another NFA device? Let's see, what else did he have? I think I've listed all those. Oh, and he gave the police a false identity. So I'm thinking, would the universal background check have worked in this case? No. He would have failed the NICS already. I mean, there's just so many things wrong in so many different ways. How would this apply to the person pushing this universal background check, Representative Cushing, right?
Right.
What would he have said to this?
I don't want to put words in his mouth. I get along very well with Representative Cushing.
But the intent.
I understand there's a lot of emotion that goes into gun control laws. But I was just thinking on the way here, gun control laws, I've never heard of a single gun control law in my entire life that has ever, under any circumstances, prevented any criminal from getting a weapon and using it on someone. In fact, the woman who came down during that brawl with the upturned knife and beer bottle, the jury didn't get to hear about it, but after I pulled those out of her hands, she ran up to just go grab another weapon. She grabbed a hatchet and chased my housemate down with a hatchet, yelling she's going to kill him for calling the cops. So if she'd been disarmed of a firearm, that's not going to stop her from grabbing another weapon. I've never heard of a single circumstance ever where any gun control law has ever had that effect. And yet a lot of these gun grabbers don't care that crime gets worse when they enact these strict gun control laws, that it puts us at a disadvantage. They don't care. They're willing to accept the higher violent crime rates because they have such a hoplophobia, such an irrational fear of firearms that they want to do something. And if something makes crime worse, they're willing to accept the higher crime rate to feel like they've accomplished something.
Because they don't believe you should defend yourself or protect yourself. And so they, in the interest of trying to create a gun-free society, or in the name of trying to create a gun-free society, what they create is a defenseless society, which is what government wants anyway.
Some of them might allow you to at least reveal the fact that you have a firearm on your hip if, and only if, you're in the process of being stabbed, if you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you're about to get killed in just the very next second, and that you don't have any other option except to reveal you might be allowed to use non-deadly force, which brings me to another topic, which is my deadly force bill, HB 598. They might allow just a little bit. They might allow you to say, hey, maybe brandish the weapon. Hey, you're about to murder me. I don't want to get murdered. I don't want my family members to get murdered.
Okay,
So,
well, that's a good question, because sometimes, and I've not been in this situation, but I could see where, as you said, if you are carrying concealed and you have a firearm on your hip and you just pull your jacket back so that somebody sees it, is that legally considered brandishing? Or does it have to be pulled out of the holster? And even if you're just holding it without your finger on the trigger, just holding it, pointing it in a low ready position, is that considered brandishing?
and I don't believe the law is clear on that. What is brandishing? Is it displaying? Is it handling? And, of course, what's going to happen in every self-defense case is your attacker or some witness who's hysterical is going to say, you are waving it around wildly everywhere, you are windmilling it, you are waving it around crazy, you are crazed, and you are out of control. They're going to say that every single time. They're always going to play down the attack or say, oh, I was just holding the knife, I was just holding the chainsaw, I was just holding the machete.
Oh, yeah, machetes. And here in New York State, I don't know whether you folks have heard about this, but in addition to the SAFE Act, which is basically trying to disarm the civilian populace, now a state senator has decided, oh, you mean these people can buy machetes online and have them delivered to New York? 3 people have been stabbed over the last few years, so now he wants to make machetes illegal in the state of New York.
Now, of course, if those 3 people had been carrying firearms, their attackers would have run screaming.
Well, the thing is that this is a farm implement. You use it to cut brush with. It isn't just to hack people off, although you hear about that being used by people who in other countries who can't afford a gun.
Yet when it's an upturned beer bottle, no one suggests banning beer. When
trust me, they did. But they did that back in the 1919s. Prohibition. They banned beer.
Right,
but not beer bottles. You could still get Coke or
that's
Pepsi.
True. That's true.
Right. I mean, nowadays everything's in either plastic bottles or aluminum cans, which, yeah, they can have sharp edges, but you got to really work at it to expose the sharp edges.
And did you know that in New Hampshire, because of in almost all 50 states, I think, you can commit negligent vehicular homicide to prevent someone from shoplifting, because negligently killing someone doesn't meet the definition of deadly force. To be deadly force, you have to purposefully or knowingly cause serious bodily injury or death, and it's not clear what serious bodily injury is. For example, if you come home from a hunting trip and you see your 14-year-old daughter being attacked by 2 hooligans in masks in her bedroom and they're cutting up her face, does that meet the definition of serious bodily injury? Unfortunately, if you sit there and you pick at every word, it might not, because serious bodily injury is severe, protracted injury or permanent impairment of any part of the body, and the definition is so vague and so open to interpretation that you can't act yourself. Now, if she's 13, it might be a felony against her, because now the victim, you're causing bodily injury, not serious bodily injury, to someone under the age of 13. However, if you peruse the statute, RSA 627, Section 4, Part 2, it says if they are committing unlawful deadly force against another, or if they're committing a felony against the actor. Well, your daughter isn't the actor unless you throw her the shotgun or rifle. You can't do anything on her behalf because they're committing a felony against her, not against you. Any member of your family is another person. So if they're not using deadly force against a family member, there's nothing you can do about it, because what are you going to do? Are you just going to brandish the weapon?
Yeah, at that point I say the law is an ass, and I'll take the time in jail to defend my daughter in such a situation.
At that point, you put a bullet in them so they can't tell tales.
But now there's the problem of the physical evidence. All they've done is cut up her face.
They're in your house attacking somebody, aren't they? Next.
Yeah, really.
The problem is
my castle, their coffin.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left. I want to get back to the definition of deadly force, which is in your bill. So what is it, and what is it that you want to make it?
The current definition of deadly force is covered under RSA 627, Section 9, Part 2, and it says essentially there are two definitions. The first part is any assault or confinement which the actor causes which he knows to create a substantial risk of causing serious bodily injury or death. However, if it's a firearm, the rule for firearm is purposely firing a weapon in the direction of another or a vehicle that is known to be occupied. So what is known to be occupied? If it's parked, then that's very difficult to prove. It's all based on eyewitness testimony. What is firing in the direction of another? Can it be 90 degrees, 60 degrees, 45 degrees? Are you purposefully trying to shoot them? Now you've got a new mens rea involved, a new state of mind. So it creates all these legal complications trying to figure out exactly what deadly force is in a real emergency. So the intent here is to simplify the definition to simply causing permanent disability or death. So one of the arguments made in the Criminal Justice Committee was, during the hearing, if somebody's shooting at me, does that mean that I have to wait until I get shot before I can shoot back? And of course it doesn't, because what the law says, if someone is about to use unlawful deadly force against you or someone else, that you're allowed to use deadly force in defense of yourself or another. And yet the Criminal Justice Committee, some of their members haven't read the law or haven't read it in a long time, and they've just gone off on these tangents and just assumed that the law means something that it doesn't mean, or that, I think that they're assuming that I haven't actually read my own bill, or that I know less about self-defense than the next guy.
So what has happened to the bill?
It's going to go up for executive session, I believe, next week.
Which means
they're going to debate it, they're going to argue it. It's not a public hearing. It's not something where you just go in and make the case for or against the bill. It's where they mark it up, or they retain it, or they decide that it ought to pass, or that it's inexpedient to legislate, and then they decide whether or not to put it on the consent calendar. The consent calendar, of course, is they lump a whole bunch of different bills on that are unanimously supported or opposed, and they just kind of push them all through as one big consent calendar. Yes. So a whole bunch of bills get passed and killed all at once in one big voice vote.
Voice vote, never a roll call.
Not on the consent calendar. It's just these are things that are obviously, the committee's view, are obviously not even worth debating on the floor. So a lot of laws get passed unanimously.
They're so far in favor or so far against that there's no reason to have a debate, because you're not going to have a close vote.
That's what they're assuming, or it's not worth spending an hour debating a bill that they think is just a slam dunk, or is just a terrible bill. I have another bill on third-party ballot access that is not only ITL'd, it's been put on the consent calendar, so I'm having to pull it off and have a little floor fight on it.
Great.
Okay, super. Let me just ask you about an additional bill that's floating around.
Okay, we've only got a couple minutes there, sir.
That's okay. HB 685, which is a Stop the Fed Gun Grabbers bill. I have an alert here in my greasy fingers from the 10th Amendment Center saying support this bill. Are you aware of it?
I believe that's the one. Isn't that the one in an emergency? I might actually have it here. 685. Yep. Prohibit a state agency, state employee, or political subdivision from.
At the Katrina bill.
Right. In the state of an emergency, the only thing that most of the federal officials did during the Katrina disaster, they didn't provide food, clothing, shelter, medical supplies. The vast majority of them were just going around disarming people. And, of course, large numbers of people died. Large numbers of people suffered, lost their homes. And the government didn't do anything except disarm people. And the consequence was, of course, there's a lot of looting of what was left. And Now there's a debate in the legislature about whether or not the state should permit state officials or law enforcement officials to just go around disarming people in an emergency. And it didn't just deal with firearms. There was a good amount of debate and discussion about whether or not firearms accessories should be confiscated in an emergency. One of the accessories that was mentioned was suppressors again. And my question is, why is there an issue of accessories, firearms accessories, straps, holsters? Why are those things being confiscated?
Which can sometimes, or most often, cost more than the actual firearm they're attached to. I think you're right, because there you're saying, again, as I said earlier in the show, freedom versus safety and security. The problem is that if you believe that the government is responsible for you, the Supreme Court has already ruled many times that the police are not responsible for your individual safety. We see a natural and a constitutional right to the right of self-defense. Well, pick up a club, pick up a whatever. The problem is, and I think it really holds true, Colt created the equalizer. And we saw that in a lot of the testimony on the gun bills, in that a gun in the hand of an older, weaker, or various sex, 250-pound man is going to have a harder time fighting against a 113-pound woman if she's got pistols in both her hands than not. And I don't understand why they wouldn't just agree to eliminate the diminishment of the capability to self-defense. I mean, I'm getting old. I used to be, when I was practicing martial arts, I could stand 6 inches from you and put my right foot in your ear all day long. I can't, I'd be lucky to reach your knees at this point. I've lost that flexibility. So, but to have a firearm, it equalizes that environment where if somebody's coming after me, I have the ability to put up some kind of defense, especially in a Katrina disaster type of environment, although those generally don't happen here in New Hampshire. But just, again, it goes back to what I read from that Kansas State Senate president. We ought to be deferring to freedom first and constitutional rights first instead of anything else.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Benjamin Franklin said anyone who would give away some of their liberty for some imaginary security gets neither. What we've seen, at least in recent history, is...
He actually said deserves neither, correctly.
Deserves neither. And recent experience and common sense say that you lose both at the same time. You trade away liberty and security for tyranny.
Indeed. Folks, it's time for us to take a quick 90-second break. We are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking with Representative Josh Moore concerning that execrable note that Commissioner Virginia Barry put out, basically saying, parents, you have no rights to your kids. We'll be right back. This is GrokTALK.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it.
Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Grok Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
And we are back. I'm Skip Murphy, your host, along with Grokster Mike. Along with me, we still have Max Abramson here, gonna ride shotgun with us. Shotgun, that's an appropriate thing to say. And we are going to bring Representative Josh Moore on, who's going to talk about a notice that was put out by the New Hampshire Department of Education Commissioner Virginia Barry, which I've tauntingly said, parents, you have no rights to your kids. And this has to do with going and the testing that's coming on, the quote-unquote mandatory testing, where she is basically saying there is no mandatory way for you to come out, to take your students out of that by parents. And Josh, I want to say thanks for coming in to Grok Talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So what's this kerfuffle, and who's right?
Well,
and who's wrong? And that's more important.
Well, I like to think that the parents are right, and I like to believe that the parents are always right. Starting off with that. Yeah, there you go. The customers are always right.
Customers are always right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, customers are always right.
Mostly.
So here's what sparked this whole thing. Well, this goes back several years, obviously, but we just had a bill come through, HB 603, which is Representative J.R. Hull, and he is a prime sponsor of this. What this bill simply does is closes any possibility of a penalty being brought against the school district, the parents, or the students for opting out. That's what the bill does. It's in big, bold letters. Now, here, when I was in the hearing, I think it was last Tuesday or whatever, a couple weeks ago, I questioned the Board of Education because, and to be honest with you, I actually was a little frightened, and I told them, I said, this looks like something, quote, that would come out of the Soviet Union. This is dangerous stuff, and I'll just read several parts off on this letter that came
Josh,
through. Yep.
Actually, it's even worse than that. Now, there's a thing in the blogosphere called Godwin's Law, which basically says whoever brings up Nazis or Hitler loses the argument first. But right. I did write this. I said Commissioner Virginia Barry just beat the nationalist, socialist, the Nazi Hermann Goebbels. At least he was honest about his intentions. He said, "We don't need you. We have your children." And that is a scary thought. And basically what this technical note is saying the same thing. Different way.
That's exactly right. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because I had a couple people tell me, they said, you just don't bring anything like that. Don't bring anything like that up in public. You'll be seen as a radical. Well, you know what? We're in radical times now. We haven't seen this ever. I mean, there have been bits and pieces in U.S. history where things like this tried to come up, but it's never been this much in our faces. We've got a serious problem. And here's some of the parts in the letter for those who are listening. It says there is no opting out option for students in the law. It goes on further to say, Therefore, parents have no legal right to opt their children out. Down at the very bottom of the second paragraph here, it says, further, the district's legal obligations must supersede parental demands that their children not take the assessment. And lastly, this is the most frightening part to me. The district's legal obligations are clear. The districts must not allow any citizen to prevent their district from fulfilling its mandate to administer the assessment to all public school students in the designated grades. Government is saying, get out of our face. You have no right, parents. You're not going to get in our way to doing what we've been mandated to do.
Yeah,
that's scary.
That should scare anybody, because the whole purpose of government is that taxpayers pay them to do certain things. They are supposed to be our public servants. They are our employees. How dare they turn around and say, regardless of what... And I would go after the legislators who wrote the law. But there are times when people should say, this is the wrong thing, period. And do all that they can to go back to, again, the freedom in the Constitution. Who owns you is really the libertarian way of putting things. And I started off being conservative. I've become more and more libertarian as I walk through all this mess of stuff. And it really is. The government is saying, we own your children. And that is scary. That you have no rights to that. And it's an attitude that's been going on for years. And I've been blogging about this. I've had video of teachers saying parents don't know less than their kids do, with the insinuation of, we have taught your kids something else.
That's exactly right. And you know, what they kept bringing up, the board kept bringing up, was the fact that this could be in violation of the federal law. Well, here's my problem. Here's my ultimate problem. I've told many people, first of all, the Department of Education has the Federal Department of Education has absolutely no constitutional right to even be established. It is found nowhere in the 18 enumerated powers. And I actually had one of the representatives tell me, that's your interpretation of the Constitution. No, it's not. It's the 10th Amendment. Any power not delegated to the federal Congress is left and reserved there to the people in the states. That simple.
Who said that?
You want to know? Is it okay if I name drop?
Absolutely, you should, because the people who do this, who say things that aren't true, they need to be called out. Yeah. And I have a special page, Progressives and the Proper Role of Government. And all it is, and a lot of them are New Hampshire state representatives or state senators, they're saying things that are obviously wrong. I would like to get that in writing so I can put it up on the page.
I would totally agree with you, and I'd be more than happy to. I was just making sure I was loud.
Up to this point now, with the FCC changing
the
internet stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's not slander, go for it.
That was Representative Peter Schmidt.
And he said?
And he said that after I had told him that the Department of Education at the federal level had no constitutional groundings and we should keep our money in state education money, he said that is your interpretation. And he actually told me if I should be there a few months longer to have an opinion. So, and for those who are listening, I'm not one to sit there and trash talk. I don't do that. I don't like trash talking. But I feel for a lot of people because I'm ready to call these people out. We have
every day.
Socialism and communism taking over our country. It's taking over our states and our federal government. I mean, you look at the FCC, you have Obamacare, you have the Department of Education pushing Common Core, which has the SBA attached to it, which is pushed and forced, obviously. As
SBA being?
The state...
is that the testing?
Yes, the standard balance
Smarter
assessment.
Balance.
Yes, smarter balance assessment test.
There's a wonderful cartoon out there I'll have to post of the doors. It says healthcare / Obamacare, and several other things, and finally internet / Obamanet.
This is absolutely dangerous stuff, and we've got to wake up. Because you have a lot of people out there who are still scared. They're still scared to step out and call things what they are. And it's about time, and I love the fact you guys are on every Saturday, because we have got to call these things out for what they are. When we call somebody a communist or a socialist, we're not name-calling. We're calling you what you are due to your ideology and what you believe, your fundamental beliefs.
It's also due to your results.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down. And They don't seem to understand that. Now, there are some, I'll admit, I'll make sport of, because if you tick me off, you've made it personal, and I go, okay, you just waved the green flag at me. Here goes. But in a lot of what we do, Mike, myself, Steve, Susan, all of the writers, we're looking at your results. And if you act according to a specific ideology, we have no problem in calling you out on that, because our foundations are the New Hampshire Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and to a smaller degree, the NHGOP platform, which tends to be very conservative. Mm-hmm. The problem is a lot of these people, even on the right in the Republican Party, don't act according to that stuff. And you're right, Josh. We need to call them out, and we need people like you and people like you, Max, to go in and say, look, my voters, my electorate voted me in to have an opinion. Yep. So, Representative Schmidt, don't tell me to shut up and stay in the back benches, because I'm not going to. You know, I like what Glenn Reynolds says of Instapundit, the huge news aggregator. You know, I just love his ideas. Punch back twice as hard. You do something to me, I'm going to do it to you, because I learned personally a long time ago, the only way you're going to shut a bully up, punch him in the nose. Yep. And then they go away. And if they come back, you do it again. People don't like the idea, oh, that's force. Oh, that's violence. Well, yeah, it's also effective in the right situations. It's not violence for the sake of violence. It's violence for the sake of creating a result, which means shut up and get out of my face.
Yeah, and I actually talked to there's several representatives.
The state takeover of everything.
Yeah. There are several representatives on the education committee that are very conservative, and they stand strong for what they believe in, and we vote very much the same, obviously. But I told one of them on Facebook the other day, I said, it's time we stand up. It's time we stand up and take our nation back, and our state, starting with the state. We've got to stand up and fight, because we're losing it.
Yeah, Josh, if you've listened to us or read us, and I don't know if you're a regular reader of Granite Grok or not, but we do have that phrase, screw D.C., save New Hampshire. And we really...
And there are a number of states beginning to think that, which is why you're starting to hear people talk about secession.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just as a tangent, there's about 13 cities and towns in New York that want to secede to Pennsylvania because New York has stopped fracking. And they're saying, we're poor, we're destitute, and now you're going to tell us we can't make any money off of what's rightfully ours? And they want to move to Pennsylvania where fracking is legal. But anyways,
and
Josh,
along the other border, they're wanting to join Vermont, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've seen that.
But not Connecticut.
No. But do you find, Josh, a lot of, and Max as well, you need to pipe in here at the right time. We'll go. I'll be traffic cop here. Do you find a lot of people in the legislature no longer willing to sit back and be nice? Are you starting to see more of a militant attitude, especially those on the right, not only against the socialist Democrats, but also the establishment GOP, especially those Jaspercrats that support the House Speaker?
Here's what I've noticed. I'm a freshman rep, so I've only been in there now about 2 months.
Yep.
So having not been in there prior to that, I can't say that I've noticed them stepping up or backing down. I will say that I've seen people step up to the plate and fight for the freedom. I will say, though, that, as it's been said many times already, you would think that the Republican majority is actually a Democratic majority this go around, because our bills are burning. A lot of the good bills are just burning on the House floor. It's disgusting.
And it's the House Majority Leader, Flanagan, who keeps going around time and again. You'll look at the blue sheet, and it's Republican, platform Republican after platform Republican signing up in favor of a bill, and Flanagan is showing up and speaking or signing off against a bill. Again and again, Republican bills are being fought by the quote-unquote majority leader. So you have the minority leader, the majority leader, and the speaker taking
why doesn't the House
side.
evict the majority leader, since he doesn't represent the majority? It's time to censure the man and kick him out. He's one of my townsfolks. He also likes the sound of his voice too much.
Yeah.
And the point is, he's wholly owned and operated by Jasper and the Democrats.
Jasper works directly under Shurtleff and Ray Buckley. And in fact, we see Jasper up there with Shurtleff and Buckley all the time. We see him talking with Democratic leadership, and we don't see him talking to certainly not any platform Republicans.
I would love to get video of him talking with Buckley. I really would.
If we had a Republican Party, these folks would be censured and kicked out.
Yeah.
Josh, back to you and this memo. So you mentioned, like everything else, we are the ADD bloggers here at Granite Grok. We go all over the place. Squirrels. So back to this technical memo and J.R. Hole's bill to basically punch a big hole in it. Where is that bill right now? Does it have a chance of getting through the House and the Senate and getting signed by Maggie the Red Hassan? Or are we just punching at the wind here? What else can be done other than parents standing up and basically doing civil disobedience and saying, screw you?
Well, I suppose naturally my first inclination would be, may as well just stand up and give civil disobedience because I'm tired of doing this stuff. We're just prolonging the inevitable. With that said, there is a process that we're going through right now, and to just give you a quick snapshot of that process, we just came out of the hearing, as I said, about a week and a half ago roughly, and we're going into exec session, as Representative Abramson has talked about a little bit, and that'll be Thursday, and there's at 9 a.m. there's going to be this whole get-together to push against this in the exec session. Now, that the exec session is public. The public just can't give their input, and that's, as Representative Abramson has stated, that is for the committee to debate on. Now, as far as getting past the committee and then the House and Senate to the governor, I think it'll pass the committee, or it'll pass the committee regardless. It's just simply a recommendation the committee will give. I think it will give an ought to pass to it, I think. I'm sure that the argument against it is going to be having to do with in violation of federal law and this and that, stuff that we get sick and tired of hearing because half of them are unconstitutional anyway. But with that said, I think it'll get passed, and when it goes to the House floor, I'm actually not 100% sure. I'd like to think that it'll pass the House floor, and I like to think that it'll pass the Senate. I doubt it'll get signed into law. I'd be absolutely flabbergasted if it hasn't.
Yeah, and I'm very disappointed to see or hear that you don't think it'll pass through the House, because that is one of the primary planks of the NHGOP platform, that parents they own their kids. They are responsible for their kids and not the state.
Right. You know, back in the 1990s, it was the first time I started hearing parents say that they were going to the school, and the school administrators and sometimes the principals and occasionally even the teachers were starting to say, the 1990s, you know, these aren't your kids, these are our kids, butt out.
And that's exactly the attitude.
I saw that attitude.
Now, if you look at the history of that, Goals 2000, which is one of the planks of Agenda 21, is a huge, voluminous tome about how education was going to be taken over. And it's in fact, Common Core is just a piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, because I've been writing about this for a while, and I've caught teachers on tape basically saying the same thing, that, Max, that they believe they own the kids.
Yeah,
the state owns the kids. Again, as you said, this is a very scary thought. Now, has Virginia Barry been challenged on this memo by anybody, any of the legislators? What has been her response to this?
She has been emailed a lot by parents and many of the activists around the state. I don't know that she has responded. I think she did respond. I should have brought the email in. I think she did respond to someone. I just can't remember what the exact response was.
Paraphrase.
I just did. I'm trying to remember exactly what she even said. I'm making sure it was her, if it was her, or so it was somebody else from the department. And I'm blanking on it. I actually should have kept it because I saw it like a week ago, and it was very general. But I actually have something here that would probably be a little more interesting, which is at the last paragraph. It says, a well-educated populace is an essential for the maintenance of democracy. It continues on. That is under RSA 193-C1. That is the current law in the state. And I'm confused because I asked them this. I said, how is a well-educated populace that's essential for the maintenance of democracy, how does that work with what you've got all written up top? That isn't democracy. You're saying, democracy, that's great, we want it, but shut up, we own your kids.
Yeah, that just says because democracy. I mean, that's a fallacious argument.
After you voted, we're going to shove you around.
Yeah.
At best, it's mob rule, where the tyranny of the majority. And frankly, it's worse than this because we can't remove these people, not easily.
No, and we're seeing that more and more where we are morphing into the progressive end goal, which is the administrative state, whereby it is the unelected, unaccountable, and almost unpitchforkable bureaucrats.
Right.
We're seeing that with the FCC. We see it with the IRS. We see it with administrative entity. Regardless of what level you're at, they just say, we will make the rules, and they will have the force of law, even to the point of declaring, we will tell you what is a felony or not, even though it hasn't gone through the legislative process, which is if anything, that is what democracy is, where our elected representatives, like you, Max, like you, Josh, you folks are supposed to make the laws. The executive branch is only supposed to execute them. And what they've done is, once again, like I say, the rule of bureaucracy, private or public, they want to expand what they do, so they start making all these rules. You guys have got to clamp down and persuade your other fellow legislators. Do not leave it up to the executive branch to make these rules. If you're going to legislate, get down to the nitty-gritty details. And if that means you only pass or consider 50 laws instead of the 1,200 laws, so be it. At least do it the right way. We may still grumble, but at least then we can say, we elected these rascals.
And yet
now
half of our bills going through the state legislature repeal, reduce old statutes or penalties, reduce something from a felony back to a misdemeanor as it was in the old days. Half the bills going through right now, here's the positive side, half the bills going through are intended to protect rights rather than take them away. In other state legislatures, almost all of the bills would take away rights.
Yeah, there's a couple of places. I think even may have been Wisconsin or maybe I was going to say maybe even Minnesota, where they've actually had unlegislative sessions to undo some of this stuff. But we need a lot more of it, Josh.
Yeah. Kind of just a little off topic from what I was intentionally going to talk about for the most part. I just read the calendar this morning for next week for the bills that are going to be voted on. There's actually a bill going through that is relative to judges and taking away their pensions after impeachment, taking away their pensions and their health care. And it was it came out of committee as inexpedient to legislate, which is to kill the bill, essentially.
Right.
So they want it killed. Representative Timothy Horgan wrote up the blurb, and the blurb essentially, one of their main points was, this doesn't happen often. This has only happened, there's only been 2 impeachment trials in New Hampshire for any judge. That was in 1790 and in 2000. And they came out as, I think, not guilty, if I'm not mistaken. But with that said, if that's their main argument for that it doesn't happen often, so let's not worry about it, then why in the world push the death penalty and repealing it since the last one was done in the 1930s? They act like it's an epidemic or something. You know, you use one argument in one place, and then the same argument you don't put in the other place to push your agenda. It doesn't register with me at all. But
not very persuasive.
Yeah, no, not at all. And these things have to be tackled. But this edict, as I like to call it, from the Department of Education is outrageous.
It is an edict. It's the only way to describe it.
Okay, as long as you brought up Mr. Timothy Horrigan.
Oh.
Yeah.
Horrigan the Horrible.
Yeah, this absolutely
kind of like Hagar, except not funny.
Yeah, we're gonna bring this discussion about Commissioner Barry to a halt here, and this goes back to what we were talking about before on that Gordon Peters stoppage. You know, the felon with the Kel-Tec 5.56 pistol and the shotgun and all that stuff. Timothy oftentimes will leave comments on our articles, and at least I have to give him kudos for somebody who is so far left, willing to come to, I would say, we're a very conservative blog site in a lot of ways. At least he tries the engagement. The problem is he leaves the comments which oftentimes have nothing to do on topic or brings up facts that have nothing to do with the main argument. And he is the WTF moment of the day, because he wrote on this. I don't know how significant this little fact is, but I see Mr. Potter was in fact arrested without a shot being fired. You're absolutely right, Timothy. It is of no significance whatsoever. It has nothing to do with anything other than if he had fired a shot, then he would have broken at least one more law. And that's all he goes. And then he goes, in addition to being busted on weapons and drugs charges, the guy was busted on impaired driving charges. But you don't even to be saying that the DUI law should be abolished. I didn't even bring up the DUI laws. I'm just saying I was concentrating on the firearm. So once again, here's Timothy bringing stuff into the argument that have no relation to whatsoever. But this was I just couldn't believe he said this. I happen to be a motor vehicle enthusiast. Okay, who belongs to the American Automobile Association. Okay, that's AAA. Most of us belong to the AAA either for the triptychs before GPSs came out, and to get your flat tire fixed or your car hauled away or what have you. Maybe you take advantage of some of their travel stuff or maybe some of the insurance, but flats, batteries, and tows is basically what we do. Motoring enthusiast? I'm not sure. So I happen to be a motorcycle enthusiast who also belongs to the AAA, which is kind of like the National Rifle Association for drivers. And I went, what? National Rifle Association for drivers. I'm sorry. I told him this is the stupidest thing he's ever written.
I guess he's equivalently. Dear me. Oh, well, I guess he's setting an equivalency between Top Gun and Top Gear.
Yeah. My organization, for what it's worth, does not favor abolishing all the motor vehicle laws. The AAA certainly doesn't favor protecting drunk drivers for the consequences of their actions. I mean, I look at this and go, there's a lot of stuff that could have been the WTF, like the internet takeover. Are now federal dietary guidelines have to make sure that we're not violating Gaia, because now you have to think of the environment when you're eating. I mean, that could have been another WTF that I would have brought up. But I'm sorry, this morning, Timothy Horrigan, ding, 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 you get our WTF moment of the day for that.
So you're saying they do believe in a god, Gaia?
They do. Well, there's
that and the global warming
Mother Nature, any alternative god.
Yeah.
That God doesn't exist, they say, but then they say that wait.
Can't we put these lefties who like ISIS together with ISIS and have them beheaded and blown up for worshipping false idols?
Yeah.
As ISIS rampages through ancient sources of civilization and destroys everything in its path because they're idols and false gods.
Are you referring to ISIS, the false god, or ISIS, the terrorist organization?
Yeah, the Egyptian god or not? Yes.
In favor of third-party ballot access, I said this in front of the Elections Committee. I said Congress's approval rating is now lower than some of the media outlets and groups that support terrorists in the Middle East. And I looked up the exact numbers, and some of them have 20 and 30% approval ratings in the country that they happen to be operating in. Congress has approval rating of something like 9%.
Yeah. Well, the other WTF that I was going to bring up. Here we are. We're all talking about ISIS right this moment, so very apropos. That, once again, who does DHS come out as far as being the most dangerous domestic terrorist organization ever? It's the Sovereign Citizen Movement. And I just went, okay, this is just like when Obama first came into office and declared, who are the domestic terrorists? Limited government, less taxes, the Constitution, the Tea Party, returning vets. I mean, it was everybody except the real terrorists, like Bill Ayers and the old weatherman type folks. Yeah. And you just look at this and you go,
maybe Obama.
My
maybe
country
Obama's
is just.
a weatherman.
I've been around a long time than you two gentlemen, not as long as Mike, and I go, our whole country must be on drugs at the top level right now for the last 7 years. Yeah. I just don't understand. And they said We're going to turn everything upside down, inside out.
Do you remember around the time of the 2012 election, what President Obama came out and said? It was a very, very scary, and we should be playing this clip over and over and over and over again every day to remind people. He was
Something
out on
about
stage,
revenge?
He was talking to a crowd, and I can't remember which speech it was, but he said, the voices that you're hearing talking about tyranny is right around the corner. You should reject these voices. You should reject these opinions.
Oh, yeah.
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 Coming from him.
Yeah, well, and again,
like,
and this will have to be the closing note because, folks, we're just about out of time. And I want to say thanks to Max Abramson, Josh Moore for coming in. Of course, Mike, who's always in every single week, and even Steve, who showed up on the phone. Yeah, from CPAC. So, folks, I want to say thank you very much for coming in. I've run out of time. We're going to cut this short. Folks, listen. Thank you for listening to GrokTALK.
Yeah, baby!
All of the music on this program comes to us through Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, or anyone else for that matter.